Good afternoon, everybody. Sorry that we're not live on Facebook, but there seems to be a technical glitch with Facebook Live and Chrome. So we're going to do this the old-fashioned way, do a Zoom meeting, and then upload the recording. So lots happened again. First of all, I hope everybody's safe, and I hope everybody wishes any healthcare workers that you know, express your gratitude and your love for them, because today is International Nurses Day. So, Vicki, take it away.
All right. Well, we're a little bit still in a waiting game right now.
What else? I pull it out.
As we've discussed and posted a bit about the contention between Congress and the Treasury and the SBA.
They're duking it out.
Yeah, they are. They really are. So they actually are speaking about it now, which is good, because for a while it was just the finger pointing. But what we have heard through the grapevine is that guidance on forgiveness, which we were expecting 2 weeks ago, is actually going to be released on the 15th. So that should give everyone clear guidelines of what is actually needed to get forgiveness on the loans. Now, what's interesting is the timing. They have put May 14th as the date for anyone who feels that they cannot certify that they really needed the PPP funds, and maybe have a change of heart that maybe they shouldn't have received the PPP funds because they don't have the hardship where they didn't really qualify. They are being asked to return it by May 14th. So it is definitely not a coincidence that they're waiting for everyone to return it who they possibly can get to return it, and then they will give the guidance on forgiveness. But the fear mongering a little bit around this has definitely come into play because they have been, first of all, saying that it's going to be hard to get forgiven. Second of all, saying there's going to be, criminal implications if, that you can't show that your business has been affected. All these kind of, some rumors, some, just reality of people speaking out of turn, but it has certainly created some fear. So people are returning the loans. So they're kind of getting what they wished for, big and small. And then on Friday, they're going to give more guidance. So we're hearing a lot of different things. So you really can't take anything you can't assume anything at this point. But we're hearing that there may be automatic forgiveness for loans of a certain size. So smaller loans may be automatically forgiven, which would make sense, so that the process of forgiveness is going to be quite tedious, and just to get those out of the way.
Has there been any conversation as to what the size of these small loans may be?
What I heard, and this is again just hearing through the accounting world, is $350,000, which is not that small, but that's what I've heard. So I've also heard the 8 weeks is going to get some flexibility. I've heard the options of the bank and the business and their lender coming up with the period of time based on whether or not the business was able to open or not. So there's it could end up being industry based, right? Like restaurants, service providers, people that, had to shut down. So still just a lot of unknowns. I almost didn't even want to say the number, because until it's actually released on Friday, it's just all concepts and ideas. So, but the good news is we should hear something on Friday. And, hopefully for, especially where this is so tedious for the smaller loans and making sure the 75% and people that have had to let people go, that could all go away if they decide to be more flexible. And then just to reiterate what we've been saying, the CARES Act, what was written by Congress, never said 8 weeks and never said the 75%. So it truly was just something that the Treasury and the SBA came up with. And Mnuchin has said publicly that he is willing to be flexible and he's willing to, make technical changes if that's necessary.
Yeah,
so
but
we're hoping
Mnuchin
for
can
that.
sit there and say that he's willing to be flexible, but with all due respect, he's not the one that makes law. The law is what the legislation is, and for criminal matters, it's going to be what the legislation says in the four corners of the legislation. It's not going to be what Mnuchin wants it to be, or so.
Yeah,
I have an issue with that's just my own personal bias about somebody coming out. It's not so much Mnuchin, it's anybody coming out and saying and anointing, I am willing to forgive or work with you. But
but the issue really is, the Treasury and the SBA are the ones giving the specific rules that the banks need to follow in order for the SBA to forgive the loans.
Right.
So although the criminal and all that kind of stuff, you can go back to the law, we need the banks to be following something that is reasonable.
No, I agree.
And that clients can follow, is easy to follow, and can be forgiven, so that's where the gap is. And we don't want banks to be putting things in place that are harder to get forgiveness from because they're scared of the SBA not forgiving it. Because, that's like we saw with Bank of America, right? Like Bank of America actually decided to not allow certain components of the original loan calculations. They just pulled it out. They pulled out the state unemployment and they pulled out health insurance. Now those are part of the calculations, but to Bank of America, that was too risky to include that in there, and they couldn't prove, there wasn't enough checks and balances with those amounts. For whatever reason they were thinking, they decided to just pull it out themselves to reduce their risk on forgiveness. So those are the kinds of things that we don't want to see at this point, where banks are putting in rules, because it's still unclear, or the SBA made it so hard.
So, that's like even one of the banks that one of our clients is working with, or a number of our clients are working with M&T. Their loan documents specifically said for forgiveness, you had to have 75% or more had to be used for payroll. So now that becomes the letter of the loan, regardless of anything else. Whereas other banks that we've worked with on behalf of our clients, there is no mention of that. It just broadly says the CARES Act, or, just broadly said what was on the application, that type of thing. So, banks like Bank of America who took that amount out of the loan calculation, or banks like M&T who made it more restrictive, unfortunately, that's what those borrowers are going to have to live with as the terms. It's not going to be something different unless the bank decides to redo its paperwork, which I don't foresee it doing, because
I don't know. That'll be interesting though, on the M&T side, right? If on
that's
Friday,
one of your clients is on the M&T side.
I know. Well, if on Friday they say you don't have to meet the 75%, what will the banks do? The 75% in so many cases is hard to meet or prove out. The calculation, especially when you have a lot of employees and people are over the 100,000 threshold, it's like a nightmare to try to track this thing. So I don't know. We'll have to see.
Also, I have a question. Did you notice or read anything where the 6-month abatement period would be extended based on if they extend the June 30th deadline? So in other words, let's say you mentioned a moment ago that the bank and the borrower could maybe, based on their ability to open or not, they may extend the loan out or extend the time that you could utilize those loans. Was that going to also extend the abatement?
I haven't heard it.
Abatement?
I haven't heard anything yet. Yeah. So still waiting on that. So again, obviously it's still unknown, but hopefully we'll know something by Friday, and then that should be very interesting once that comes out. The other point today, which I think is just really interesting, is that the there's only 40% of this second round of PPP funding has been utilized. The demand for PPP has significantly decreased. And the theory is that a lot of it was driven by fear. There was so much in this second round of, who took it that shouldn't have, and all the things we mentioned in the beginning, that it is believed by many that it was, people are just like, I don't even want to deal with it. It's fear that you're not going to be forgiven, fear that they're going to come back and say you shouldn't have received this money, fear that it can't be used for those specific purposes because of all these other extenuating circumstances, rightfully so, and that people just said, forget it, it's not even worth it, which is unfortunate. Where we have the economic injury disaster loan, who got funded twice and is run out of funds twice. They've had to reconfigure that loan several times with the changes in the advance, the changes with the dollar amounts of the loan. And, from my perspective, that was, in some cases, a better deal. I mean, you could use it for almost anything. Yes, it was a loan, but it helped businesses more than this PPP ended up helping.
The EIDL has been increased to the loan.
100, as of right now, it's 150,000, but it's limited to agricultural businesses. So it's almost not there anymore, right? So essentially they were going to run out of money, and then they just made it really, really, really restricted because the agricultural businesses need extra help right now. But I don't know, maybe they'll shift. I think that PPP, they're going to change some things in a third round and then have it be a lot more flexible. So somewhere in the middle of a PPP and an EIDL. But it just, it's a shame there was this funding approved, and now people are just like, this doesn't help me meet my needs. We're past all this with the 8-week period. I mean, businesses, 8 weeks was something they determined in March.
Right.
At the end of March. So it's not even.
I also think they would be hard pressed if they have created this fear where nobody's applying for the loans and it's only been used to 40% of its capacity. Mm-hmm. I think anybody would be hard pressed to try to say, oh, well, you shouldn't have gotten a loan because you might not have been totally impacted, but there was some impact or just even no impact at all. The fact is, you're not taking it or restricting it from somebody else and getting it. So I think that by doing that and creating this buffer of money that's still available is going to potentially, in the long run, take that, oh, I wasn't impacted, so therefore I didn't have any right to it.
Yeah, that's a good point too.
Is the new guidance specifically, because I remember, we've talked about the ways it's going to be forgiven, and there's certain thresholds that have to be met, and they kind of keep changing which question has to be answered first. For the most part, is now the first question that has to be answered whether your business was impacted somehow from COVID-19?
I couldn't say ordering of questions, right? Because we don't know what's going to actually have to be provided for forgiveness, like what that form is going to look like or anything about it. But I have heard that banks, again, based on what's being said now by the Treasury and the SBA, that the banks may be looking for proof of impact. So revenue going down, just some sort of proof to show that there was an impact to the business.
And that's just going towards forgiveness. If you don't ask for forgiveness, and you just pay the loan off at 1%,
right, correct.
Then all this goes away. So you basically have a 1% loan for 18 months, or for amortized over 18 months, 2-year time frame.
Right.
I mean, it may be worth it then to go through all that hassle. You just have to strategize.
Yeah, I mean, I think a company that it was still a company that could stay in business. I mean, if their doors are shutting and they don't know if they're going to last for a month or two, you certainly don't want to end up with a loan. But in some cases where it was a bridge for you, it just turning into a loan is not necessarily a bad thing.
Right.
So, I think, we don't really know who, but there's a lot of businesses out there who are going to it's the shutting of the doors and never being able to reopen again. That's a big majority of businesses that are trying to get PPP, and it's not really helping them because they have to jump through so many hurdles. So it's really those that hopefully they're going to, let forgiveness just slide. So another thing that I thought was interesting is the New Jersey Society of CPAs did a poll of their members specifically to get feedback on the view of their business clients. So New Jersey is a good, it's a good area to look at because it was so on here, but also it was so severely impacted, right? And there's a lot of businesses in this small state of that was severely impacted.
And they've got a lot. New Jersey itself is a very diverse state when it comes to businesses because you've got the beach resorts that are very, very seasonal.
Yeah.
You've got manufacturing. You have some agriculture, not a lot, but there is some manufacturing. And then you've got the traditional service-based businesses, hospitality businesses.
Yeah.
So it's a good, I agree with you. It's a good, New Jersey has a bad rep sometimes,
right.
but I lived my summers while I was growing up at the Jersey Shore. So it was always like my second state.
Yeah.
So I love Jersey, but I never played into the armpit of the nation routine. But no, it is a really good, it's a good base to take a look at because it's very diverse. So.
Right. So I think that the answers that came out of this, which I'll go through, are definitely probably the same percentages and responses that you would see East Coast, West Coast, metropolitan areas, states that you could compare to New Jersey. Now, maybe Midwestern states, it would be better responses, but I don't think you would get much worse anywhere. So one of the questions was for the businesses that have had decreases in revenue or employment level to whatever degree. So, we're impacted. On average, how quickly do these business owners think they're going to be able to recover or get back to pre-crisis levels? So 27% of clients said they'll recover in 6 months. 34% said 6 to 12 months. 29% said more than 12 months, and 10% said they won't recover, they're going to go out of business. Now, this goes back to when we very first started this group, we were saying you need to be looking at least 6 months, if not 12 months. And I think that this really supports that, and it's almost more than that at this point to the over, a third of these respondents were saying it's going to take over 12 months to recover. And I think with the way things are today, that makes sense. But definitely up to a year is a very real, over 50% are pretty much saying that it's going to take at least up to a year to recover. So, that the sudden switch flipping that this is going to be over, I think we are well beyond that at this point. So the planning process and the projection process, like we were just talking about our client who we're going out to customers and getting their projections of their capacity, what they're projecting their capacity is going to be at least till the end of the year so that we can then bake that into our projections because what they think is going to happen is going to affect this client very much. So I think that having conversations with your customers, with your vendors, extremely important to get where their mindset is over the long haul, at least the year.
And that's why doing a cash forecast or having a cash forecast built out at least through the end of the year, preferably through Q1 of next year would be more ideal. At least you can send something that is realistic and has the capability of being like what we like to say interactive, so changes can be made, updates can be made to it where you don't have to rebuild it every time. At least you'll know a few months out if it's built right when you're going to run into problems.
Right.
So
and then really when do we have a situation where updates might have to be made because of a government mandate, because I think that we all need to be thinking about, okay, the reopening and what's the timing of this reopening by state, by locale, whatever. And then, but anything can trigger well, not any, if all of a sudden cases go up, because now at the Jersey Shore, everyone just went crazy. Now, what does that mean and what's going to get closed down? And now you have to shift it. So it's really got to be like a working model that's probably going to be updated more so than we ever need to update something, because, you don't know on a daily basis what's coming.
And there could also, besides just changes in government, what the government's doing, whether it's individual locations or specific locations, or generally, there could be a second wave that could last longer and therefore have a greater impact later on in the year. It's not just, we're going to, we're going to increase social distancing, or, we're going to say that there's going to be curfews, but there may be another total shutdown, and it could be even longer. So you've got to plan this out. And you got to get with your advisors, who's ever helping you. You got to get with them to make sure that you've got a plan to ride this whole thing out for the next 9 months, which will go into almost a year now.
So one of the other questions was, what are their top, what are business clients' top concerns? Okay. So the top
Let me guess, cash flow.
So, but it kind of comes back to what we were just, so 77% say cash flow, not a shock. About
75% say cash flow.
If that's, and that's fine. Normally in a booming economy, there's cash flow issues. Businesses, having a hard time managing cash. So now it's just, really blown out completely.
I'm surprised it's not a higher number.
Yeah. Well, then the next one,
97%.
Yeah, it probably should be. The next one was meeting payroll, which to me is cash flow too. But the third was getting customers back. And this to me goes into what we were just saying about the things you don't know. Safety, the expense of creating a safe environment, and not knowing how people are going to respond to this. That is probably even a bigger unknown than what is the government going to do and what's the reopening plan going to be. Not knowing how people are going to respond is really a big unknown. So getting customers back, how they're going to come back. That was the third, then operating costs, PPP loan forgiveness, all financial stuff later. But that third most concerning thing is, getting the customers to engage and come back, and especially for, services that are, provided traditionally in person. So.
And that to me goes, this isn't our forte when it comes to business development and marketing. But all of our marketing brethren out there that are advising clients, the thing is, you have to figure out, you're going to have to pivot. You're going to have to figure out a different way to do business, because this is we're not going back to what we were 3 months ago. People's habits are going to change. Their business is going to change. Your services, your products, the way you offer your products and services are going to change. I was talking to a buddy of mine who owns a very profitable liquor store in Prince George's County. He's not things have stayed pretty normal for him because of curbside delivery. Not going to get rid of that because people are now expecting it. And so he's got to build that into the way he delivers his product or service. So he's going to ramp up his online presence, the capability of being able to order online, being able to have people answer phones and process orders. So it's a whole different way. It's his core business, but it's a different way to deliver. So he's pivoting in that regard, and he's being very, very intelligent about it. And he's realizing, this is just a different way. We're still offering the same product, but we're just delivering it a different way. And it's going to help him down the road differentiate himself from potentially other liquor stores around. So he may even go to delivery. Who knows? So, but it's just, you have to start thinking creatively and outside the box, because you're going to I don't care what business you're in, you are going to have to pivot. and change the way you do things, because it's not going to go back.
Right. No, and no time soon. I mean, whether it ever goes back is one question. And then, you know, it's definitely, no, it's not going back anytime soon. So I think that, you know, this kind of planning of how you're doing business, I mean, yeah, you should be thinking forever, you know, forever into the future, but definitely the next two, I mean, to me, it's a 2 years, this is a 2-year cycle at least of there being difficulty in, you know, providing services in the same way, not a B2B, but definitely the individuals, you know, the hair salons, the nail salons, will I ever get my nails done again? I mean, really, it's like what you have to put in place to make people feel safe enough to go is really, it's a lot. So, yeah, so, and that's just providing the same service, but having the protection. And then there's also the new services or the new way of servicing the customer. So,
yep, I mean, I agree. I think 2 years is a good number, a good time frame. But again, people can understand it and agree that it's 2 years, but are they going to take action? Or are they going to be, like I always say, the ostrich and stick their head in the sand and say, oh, well, oh, woe is me. You got to act. As I always say in my email, one of my favorite mantras is actions create results. So I have that in my email signature, and it's true. You got to act. You can't just sit on the sidelines. Now's not the time, because there's going to be opportunities when the dust settles, and you want to be in position to take advantage of those opportunities, no matter if it's just pivoting the way you provide your service or sell your product.
Yeah, I think that early on there was definitely a lot of head in the sand, right? You think that, oh, this is going to be over, you know, in a month or so. But I'm hoping, you know, I would think that at this point, everyone is looking, I mean, not looking at it and understanding to a degree that you have to be doing something different. I don't know. We'll see. So, yeah, that's what I have today.
Awesome. So any previews for Thursday?
No previews. I'm hoping that we're going to have, every day things change. So I honestly come up with what we're going to talk about the morning of, because you just never know what's going to get released or what stories we're going to hear. So,
well, thank you for staying on top of this. And everybody who ever has used our PPP loan tracker, even with the one with the updates, please let us know how how well it's, how effective it's been for you. And if there's any changes you would like to see in it, we can give it to our expert on Excel and have Karen take a flyer on and try to make it even better. So we always want to improve. We don't want to stay stagnant. So thanks for joining us. Talk to you Thursday. Stay safe, everyone.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.